Hey everyone, this is a video on 5.2. This video will be rather short. It ties into 5.1 very heavily, and even some of the homework questions on 5.1, you could kind of see them in this section. So this will extend 5.1 to where instead of graphing one linear inequality, you'll have multiple. So when you do that, when you have multiple inequalities, just like when you graph multiple lines, the answer or the solution is where the lines will intersect. Well, in this case, since you have inequalities and you're dealing with shading like half of the planes, every inequality you graph will shade one side or the other. So once you graph multiple linear inequalities, you're going to be looking at like the final shaded area, like which region of your graph are all the inequalities shading in essence. And we typically call that the solution region. Some books will say the feasible region as well. Okay. So, process is you graph each inequality. So you can use Desmos for this. Desmos is very good with keeping track, especially shading. If you graph multiple things, it'll shade on top of each other and look a little bit different. Identifying intersections, Desmos also does this very well. So the region corresponding to the intersection of all the graphs, remember where all the shaded areas are intersecting, that is the solution. Okay, so anything in that would work to satisfy all those inequalities. Graphing calculators are very useful, or Desmos, right? Right. So let's look at this first one here. We want to solve this by doing it graphically, okay? So there's a few things you could do here. And let's type these in Desmos. So, and then we'll look at the graph here. So we have x plus y is greater than 6. So let's go to Desmos. X plus y is greater than or equal to 6. Right, so we have that blue line here. So let me go back to the home screen. So we see that here. Just to think, we see the intercepts are 0, 6. That's the y-intercept. The x-intercept is 6, 0. And then if we go back, the next line is 2x minus y is greater than 0. So let's type that one in. Let me just double check everything. All right, and you see now the green one has the shaded part and it's to the right, or you could say the lower part of that line. And the first equation is the upper part of that line. So where they intersect is, you could think over here in the top right, okay? And I'm just pointing out all of the, for the blue line, 0, 6, 6, 0 are its intercepts. For the green line, it only has one intercept of 0, 0, and they intersect at 2, 4. Okay. So we can always graph this here. Back on our notes. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we saw the first line was like this. And it was shaded above. And then the second line was like this. And I'm going to use my blue color, and it was shaded this way. So at the intersect, I'm going to use green to show where they overlap is right here. So this is my solution region, and anything in this would work. And now some people call, if there's a particular point that kind of defines it, you can think this one right here. This, you can call this a corner point. It's a point, like a corner that touches your region, okay? You could practice with the next one here if you'd like. And then it talks about a corner point of a solution region is a point in the solution region that is the intersection of two boundary lines. So in essence, since these two lines make one point right here, that is the corner point. So 2, 4 is the corner point. So one thing I will state that these first two had both greater than or equal to, but remember you could also have greater than or less than or equal to or less than. So remember, these two would be a dotted, right? The dot line, and this would be your solid. So do be aware of that, especially when you're graphing these on MyLab. And we can practice one on MyLab too. So now this one you see you have quite a few. So as I said, if you have 5, 3, 4 different inequalities to graph, graphing all of those by hand will take a very long amount of time. So I would say practice with Desmos. Okay, Desmos can do all of these. Okay. So let me key these down and we can start keying them in Desmos, okay? And so let me take a picture. Okay. So I'm going to go over to Desmos now. And let's start keying these in. Now what you need to do is you need to enter every inequality is a separate box, okay? If you try to do all of them, separate them with commas, it just won't work. So if I do 2x plus y is less than or equal to 22, I see the purple one here, so I want to kind of see everything. So I'm going to zoom out just a bit, okay? So I can see that, what it looks like. The next one is x plus y is less than 13. Less than or equal to 13. Right? So I see that black one here. Right? And then the next one is 2x plus 5y is less than or equal to 50. Let's see, there's another one there. So as we see right now, these are those would be the 4 corner points, okay? All of them kind of overlap, and you kind of see that that's like the darkest shade because it has all of them. And then we're just going to do the last two. X is greater than or equal to 0. That just implies you're to the right of the x-axis. And if I do y is greater than or equal to 0, that means I'm above. So it might be hard to see because there's all these colors. So one thing to note, that you can kind of see where they overlap, the most like opaque or like not really clear to see those grid lines. So I'll highlight that for you. And this does take some practice. So that would be that region where we're shading everything, okay? So let me take a picture of all these corner points again. Okay. Right. So now over here, it says solve the system, and it says and find the corner points. So you have this here. So what I'm going to do, since I know these last two things is at the bottom, this tells me that I'm in the first quadrant. So for my graph, I can just say here is the x-axis. Here is the, here is the y-axis, right? And now for that first line, right, if I want to graph everything here, I'm just going to, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I'm going to, let me think, I will, easiest way. So for the first line, let's see, count by twos, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. Then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. All right. So let's graph that first line. So the 2x plus y is less than or equal to 22. So you want to make sure you can get these, graphing it. On Desmos, you can always get the intercepts to plot the points. That's probably the simplest way. So for this first one, your x-intercept from our graph on Desmos, we got it to be 11, 0. So we're going to plot that here. And then the y-intercept was 0, 22. So it'll be all the way here. And then we're just going to try to connect these as best as possible. Right? And I made a solid line because it's less than or equal to, because it has that inequality. Now, I'm just going to lightly shade that. If I test the origin, that would be true. You can see that on Desmos. So we're shading below. Okay. And then the next one, x plus y is less than or equal to 13. So this has an x-intercept at 13, 0, and then a y-intercept at 0, 13. So you can check that. You can also graph on Desmos to get that information. So we'll be here, and we will be here. Okay. And then that's also below. So if I create a different color, then for this one, I'm also below. And then the next one was 2x plus 5y is less than or equal to 50. So for this, the x-intercept is 25, 0. And then the y-intercept is 0, 10. So as you see, graphing these by hand can be a little tricky sometimes, and how they intersect. So my picture is a little bit off, right? So as I said, graphing these by hand can always create some sort of issue. So that's why I said use Desmos. So by hand can create error, as you see with my picture here. Use Desmos. So the corner points that we get are 0, 10, the origin, 5, 8, 9, 4, 11, 0. Okay. So if you kind of think that if you have 5 lines and, the first two intersect and then these intersect and then they intersect these two lines here, you're going to create quite a bit of points, right? So we get 5 corner points here to help get our region. And later in 5.3, we're going to use these corner points and maybe we have to do something extra with them. So we see that this is where we would shade. Okay, so my picture is a little bit off. There should be a little bit more. I think this line should be a little bit lower like this, and that'll work a little better. And that's what the picture should look like. Okay, so let me erase that other line here. So it should look a little bit more like that. So we have a point here, a point here, a point here, a point here, and a point here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay. So I'll do those in blue. Should have one here, 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 here. So you have 5. Okay. You can practice with this. Desmos is very helpful here. Now, one thing you want to notice is all of these have greater than. Right? So remember, this just tells you first quadrant. But up here, all of these were less than. So you notice it created that like box here. If you shifted all of these to greater than, technically what you're going to be looking at, if you look at the solution at the end of the notes, just so you're aware, right, is that you'll see here what happens. They're not below all the lines, they're actually above. Okay? So do practice this. Graphing the second one on Desmos, can you get the right solution set? Okay. So one thing is, if it's bounded, that means every side of the region is enclosed, then it's bounded. But if it's not bounded, it's unbounded. So this one up here, this would be bounded because every side has one of my lines in my inequality. The unbounded is like the one that you'll practice with here. This would be an unbounded region because where's the line up here? There's no line. Where's the line over here? There's no line. So that's why it's unbounded. So to keep going, there's this application here. Okay. So it says a patient on brown rice and skim milk diet is required to have at least 800 calories and at least 32 grams of protein. Each serving of brown rice is 200 calories and 5 grams, and each serving of food, how many servings of food should be eaten each day? Does it have the skim milk somewhere? So this one, let's see, I think it's leaving out. Okay, so usually in this, you have a diet, and one thing it's missing, it says, so each, if I could spell each right, each serving, it's missing something, of skim milk is 80 calories and 8 protein. Okay. So we have how much skim milk. So for instance, if you need to meet, let's say, 800 calories, then you could just drink 10 things of skim milk because they're 80 each. 80 times 10 would be 100. And that would give you how much protein? 80 grams of protein. That could work, right? Or if you just want to eat rice, you could do 4 servings of rice. That'll give you enough calories, but it won't give you enough protein, right? So this was, remember, when you do these inequalities and you're looking at the solution set, there's many different answers. So how many servings of each food should be eaten? So there's a myriad of answers. There's so many that you can think of, right? So first thing is we need to, so you could do a table for this, and they do this in the book. All right. So you could have, we have calories, and then we have brown rice, and then you have skim milk, and then you have the requirement that you need, okay? So remember calories, brown rice is 200, skim milk is 80, and you need 800. And then for protein, brown rice is 5, skim milk is 8, and you need 32. So you can think of it like this. You can think of brown rice as your X, skim milk is your Y. So if I do, this first one will be 200X plus 80Y is greater than or equal to 800. And the second one will be 5X plus 8Y is greater than or equal to 32. So you want to think you multiply them because how many brown rice servings you have, you just multiply to get the total calories. So you can think of this as like the total calories for brown rice. This is the total calories for skim milk. If you add them, it will be all the calories you intake, right? Likewise for the two at the bottom, total for protein from skim brown rice, and then from skim milk, and the total protein. And one other thing that's not mentioned here is you need to at least eat some of each. So you have these two like understood to be there, but so we have those four. So what it says, what is inequality? So we have that for the calorie. And then we have the other one for, right? And then what are the inequalities? That you just need to at least eat something, right? It can't be a negative number. And then it wants you to graph it. So you could use Desmos for this, okay? Okay. So if we look at Desmos here, so we'll do our first ones. X is greater than 0, y is greater than or equal to 0. And then we have 200x plus 80y is greater than or equal to 800. So we see we're already in this upper right region. And then the next one, 5x plus 8y is greater than or equal to 32. So we see that it looks like we're in this top right region. So that's a corner point, that's a corner point, and this one is. Those would be your 3 corner points. So this is a very visual thing, so Desmos does help. Okay. So yeah, that's our region. Okay. So practice with these. Before we go, I'm gonna do some MyLab. So let's see if my iPad can do this, or if I have to switch to the computer. So if I try to open this, let's see if it works, or if I have to like redo it. Oh, it doesn't look like I have to do it. Okay. Well, let me switch the window here, and I will log in on my computer and do this real quick and show you guys a few things on the MyLab and Mastery. Okay. Okay, so you should be able to see it now. Wait, hold on, not this one. Let's go to the, let me take away the iPad one. Okay. I think I need a different tab. Let me just show. I'll just show the entire screen. Should be okay. All right. So if we see here, if I just go to the most recent assignment, okay, just remember after 5.2, there's only one more and that's it. And then you're done with your MyLab. And if you've done all your mini projects up to that point, then you're good. I will be reopening the projects near the end in case you want to practice. So we see here. So these first questions just talk about, is 8,7 a solution? That means it satisfies each one of these inequalities. So you need to check. Okay. And there's a few of those. So just, okay, and we have this like region here. So just practice on Desmos. Can you get which quadrant, not quadrant, but which shaded area this is? Okay. Now, when you're graphing this, let's say this one. So if I want to do this, right, so the x is greater than 1, so I'll do a line. And I now have that x is less than 1. That is a vertical line. So I'm not going to shade yet, because you shade at the end once you graph all your lines. So for the first line, 2x plus y is greater than 4. How would you want to graph that? So you could plot it on Desmos if you wish. Okay. You could solve it for y. So you'll get something like think that, okay? And then you need to check. So for the first one, you're less than 1, so you're shaded to the left of your first line. For this one, you're actually shaded above. So I think once you have all your lines drawn, you do your little bucket here, and then I can shade this part, right? And let's see if that works. Great. So make sure you graph all your lines and then you shade at the very end, okay? So a lot of these have that, especially at the end, all right? So if you do have any questions, just send me an email. But some of these at the very end, like this one, you want to think, how am I going to graph this accurately? Right? Like for this second one or third one here, you could do it 3, but it could be very difficult to get that accurately. So just take your time, because you just have to. So we have that one, and then these other two. So I was just graphing them on Desmos and using their intercepts, because it seems like you can do that here. And you want to do the other 3, all 3 together, and then get your shaded area. So if you do have any issues with this, you always have to graph all the lines first, and then you need to, all inequalities, right? And then you'll need to do your shaded part at the end. So thanks for watching the video. Please email me if you do have any questions. I'll be more than happy to help you.